Will I be joining? No, I won't be participating at all in this meeting. The board's
You're
just,
doing the proposal.
I'll check for like.
Did I miss it? My gosh.
No problem. I'll take a look. I'm gonna shoot that off to myself. right
Oh,
now, if
okay.
that's
That's probably faster. It's, why is it doing that? Whatever you and I just were talking about just came across my headphone.
That might be coming across the live stream, so there's a little bit of a delay. Second.
It's a little delayed.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't need that running in your background. You're still live. Now there should be no more echoes. We're on a charger. We're live. I've got the link. Check on Dr. Cypher.
This should
Yep,
click
in a-
on.
Yep, in a moment. Can you click on videos? Let's refresh your page.
And go home.
1 moment, please.
Okay.
If you mind, I can
Mr. Moore, when you have a moment.
That's the live version right there.
And this just comes up on home.
Yep.
Really slow. How do you make it bigger?
You would be following along to interact with me.
Looking for chat.
Oh, yeah.
For board members that are now looking at us and each other, we're trying to get hooked up into our Zoom, no, I'm sorry, into our YouTube streaming for the public so that we can follow chats.
Yep.
Just there. Now you can pull that volume all the way down. So then you won't be hearing two feeds of audio, but that still allows you to see the chat over
Oh,
here.
perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Here you go.
Mike said it looks great from his end. So
Super.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Is this what I should see?
Mhm.
And the chats will appear here.
they should, yeah.
Let's see what happens. That's a good way to approach it. Mrs. Van Meer, are we thumbs up? Let's launch this.
We are live.
I welcome our audience to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Gibraltar Area School Board on Monday, October 26th. As we were experiencing and perhaps seeing, hearing that this evening we are asking our audience to join us through a streamed YouTube. We are doing this as a preventative action to resolve an issue that occurred at our last school board meeting when we were, to use the vernacular, Zoom bombed, and we had folks intervening into our meeting inappropriately. So we are attempting this evening using a Zoom meeting between board members and administration and a streamed YouTube for our audience. I am looking at a screen that says we have 31 members watching currently on the stream of YouTube. And we will be looking at their chats and their comments as the meeting proceeds. That's our preliminary. The school board began its meeting at 6 o'clock, went into executive session per the posted agenda, took care of its business in executive session, and returned to the regularly scheduled agenda, which will bring us to item number 3 on that agenda. We are at item number 3, approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 12th.
I move to approve the minutes. I'll second. Whichever.
We have a motion. We have a motion by Mrs. Hickey, a second by Mrs. Sherman to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 12th. Is there any discussion of that motion?
Yes, minor detail. Ward became Mrs. Bremer on at least one vote.
We will correct the names so that Mrs. Ward's name is correctly recorded in the minutes of that meeting. Thank you, Mr. Weborg. Are there any other corrections, additions, or comments upon those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
The opposed, motion passes. Item number 4 of our agenda is communications. I would note for the board that since our last meeting, we received mail from Mary Laughlin, Becky Rarica, James Rarica, Michael Mercier, Brenda Kita 3 times, and the Northrops, Karen, Steve, Missy, and Sam. Has the board received any other communications since our last meeting?
Only that I think Dave and Vonnie were also on that, if you're including Karn and Steve.
Thank you. We will include the clan. Any other communications? Mrs. Van Ness?
Melissa's came through at 1:40 today. Beth New also sent one at 5:40 today.
5:40 got a little too close to the binding time. We typically would say all communications needs to be received prior to the day of the meeting, but given the nature of our electronic communications and its ubiquitous sense, it's everywhere all the time. And if we read it, we see it. Thank you, Mr. Weborg. Any other communications?
I had received one and I was blind copied, so I will send it off to the board from Carol Vandewall.
Thank you. I don't believe anybody else perhaps received that. Seeing the shake of the head, saying no. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mrs. Sherman.
Mhm.
No other communications. We'll move on to the 5th item of our agenda, which is the open discussion. Are there any issues or items that the board would like to engage in an open discussion?
I would, if I may. I was asked to vote, our vote at the WASB Regional 3 meeting last Tuesday. And I did vote for Sue today, who won the election at 85%, and will also then be the president of WASB for 21. So I think she is the board member from Sebastopol and does a very, very dedicated to the WASB and the work they do. So I was very happy that she won. And I think she'll do a great job for each of us. And she's very accessible to any concerns or questions you may have regarding WASB and the workings. I have one more comment. I would like to thank Lauren Ward for doing a college application essay free online for seniors in writing their college application essay. And as some of you know, that was one thing that I did with seniors every year, is opening and writing your college essay. With alternative entrance right now where test scores are not, the essay becomes very important and vital to a student's application. So thank you, Lauren. I am so glad you are doing this, and I know you're doing an excellent job. So I hope students sign up, and maybe you'll be doing it 3 times because probably more than 20 will need it. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Mrs. Hickey. Any other board comments, options for us on open discussion this evening? I will go forward then with something I'd like to talk about in open discussion. It is, I think, indisputable that last March, when we engaged as the state and nation engaged in the responses of schools to the pandemic, that no one anticipated that 5 school months into October, closing of October in this school year, that we would still be in remote and looking beyond this point. We assumed as a school board 2 missions as we planned for this school year. One mission was the safety and health of students and school staff. A second was the education of all children. And the administration created a design and a plan that the board approved that has moved us towards both missions. We are indeed a low incidence schoolhouse. All of the mitigation that we have put into place is working very well in our schoolhouse. As we watch and listen, though, to all of the commentary about education, our second mission, we find that we have a high number of teachers who are doing outstanding work as remote teachers to children learning at home. 5 months, though, of remoting is a long time and getting longer daily. I think it is time for us to re-examine the courses that we've set and make a course correction or have a conversation of such. I think it's time for us as a board to talk about how do we maintain a low incidence safety net around our school for children and teachers and staff, and at the same time begin reintroducing children back to the schoolhouse. Therefore, I am going to hand to our superintendent this request. I request the administration to make appropriate posting for a special meeting of the school board of the Gibraltar Area School District for Monday, November 2nd, 2020, to be held at 7 p.m. The single agenda item will be, here are the administration's plans for A, phasing the district from remote learning for all children to an optional parent choice of in-school or remote learning for children, and B, using district-approved mitigation protocols for student participation in athletics, arts, and activities programs. I believe that if, in receiving this request for a special meeting, we provide the board, the administration, with a week to review our current course and look at possible strategies for bringing children back into our schoolhouse. The board, a week from tonight, then would hold a special meeting to listen to that report and those recommendations, so that 2 weeks from now, at our regularly scheduled meeting in November, our first meeting in November, the board can consider those recommendations from the administration, and if needed and wanted, take action to change our course and our current design.
I think that's a very good plan, and I support it 100%.
I concur.
I observe some nodding. Then I will literally in a few minutes get up and hand this letter, as is required, to our school administrator, requesting a special meeting to be posted for a week from tonight, 7 o'clock on Monday, November 2nd. That said, are there any other items of open discussion in which the board members would like to make comment? Hearing none, I will look then to see if there's anything that's being posted in our chats. We now have 41 folk. On my screen, I read nothing. It could be my reading of my screen, but we will see what transpires. Let us go then to our next business item for this evening, item number 6, which is committee reports and We have 3 committees that met since our last meeting. Our Student Learning Committee met on October 19th. I again will make apologies to the Policy Committee, which met after us. We did run over our time, but we are a busy committee. We talked about non-academic skill sets, things that children in remote education need to be learning beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic. Some of those are technological, some of those are collaborative, some of those are how to ask questions, some of those are how to persist. Some of those are taught in curriculum, and some of those need to be introduced for those children who will be continuing with remote education, as we all may. We had some discussion, no plans were made, no actions taken. The committee, next item, reviewed our grading policies during remote education. The board and our audience may recall that the board took action last spring to amend the grading policies for children as they ended the fourth quarter, second semester of last school year. Did so appropriately. Our principals informed us that this year, as we complete the first grading period, we'll be returning to our posted board policies on grading for elementary and secondary schools. The waivers that we employed last spring or do not apply at this time. Third item at that meeting, we heard an update on art, music, and physical education instruction and curriculum during the remote education period. We learned a lot about how art is being instructed and learned by children while not at school, how music, or I should say, how these performance areas of art and music and physical education are difficult, but yet we can do so appropriately by individualizing activities for children. We heard from our music instructors about elementary and secondary music teaching that's going on now and learning. And we began with physical education, in particular at the elementary school. It was very enlightening, very helpful for us to understand as a committee how art, music, and PE continues. We had 2 items left on the agenda, but time ran out, and we adjourned so that we can move on to the next report, which we will hear now, which is policy.
Helps if I unmute. The policy committee continued discussions on some of our NEO updates to work through those, as well as working on the wellness policy, our continuation of board staff communications, employment of substitutes, and use of personal technology devices, both for our staff and for our board members. We had many policies that are ready for review. We are a couple of weeks behind getting them to you, so we get them ready for you, and then you will see them in a couple of weeks. So we have some on the agenda tonight from our previous meetings, and then we will have more coming for you at the next meeting that will be ready. And we will continue to work through our Neola updates, as well as any other policies that come forward that are pertinent to the current school year or the pandemic that need to be addressed more expediently. And our next meeting is November 2nd at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. Are there any questions for the policy committee?
Just a general question about committee meetings. All committee meetings will move forward on Monday, in addition to the special meeting on Monday evening? Question mark.
Initially, I thought not, but because it's a 7 o'clock meeting, why not?
Okey doke.
Mrs. Ward, would you move not to meet as a committee member?
Having not seen the agenda yet, I know that we have 2 items that we didn't get to that are somewhat pressing that I think we should discuss. So I'm not moving to put it off at this time. I was just more of a scheduling curiosity.
The issue will be, I think, that it is for our administrators who would be participating in the committee meeting, and then a special board meeting. Can we get everything set up in time?
We will do our very best. I think we're going to be focusing all of our time on the initiative that's just the directive that's just been given us. It's going to take a lot of time and thoughtful planning on discussion on transitioning into a reopening plan for students to attend campus. That's where I'm going to expect my administrators to spend most of their time. So we will do our best with the other committee meetings as the agendas call for it.
Then we will plan agenda for these two committee meetings on Monday to minimize your commitment to the meeting other than turning on the airwaves. Thank you.
Dr. Cipher, I would actually say I would be in favor of not having the policy committee meeting. Our policy committee agenda has some very big items that the administrative team have been working on and have to really give some details about. I would hate for them to worry about spending that time. If we want to just pick some easy Neola updates, I would be happy to do that for our agenda, but otherwise, I don't want to take on some of the big agenda topics that we currently have on the policy, on the plate of the policy committee, knowing what the administration is going to be under to accommodate the special meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. Good insights. And given those insights, then why don't we cancel our two committee meetings from next Monday night and focus upon this special meeting? Thank you very much.
Did you want to move them to the 16th or?
I think they will meet in their normal places on the first and third Mondays. So we will meet in committee on the third Monday.
Yep, so the next policy and student learning would be November 16th at student learning, then at 4, policy at 5.
Thank you.
I would only request that the two agenda items that we did not get to at student learning this last week, ensure that they are on the agenda for the following meeting, the rescheduled meeting, given what might be more content for the student learning committee coming up in both the special meeting and the ensuing school board meeting. I don't want to lose those two items in the forward movement of anything else.
We'll assure that those are on that agenda. Thank you, Mrs. Ward. The extracurricular committee also met. Mr. Pia?
We met on Thursday of last week to continue our examination of the non-athletic extracurricular activity wage scale. We've come up with a format. Basically, we looked at the athletic side has a coach and an assistant coach pay scale that we've agreed on. And we think that there's a third category in the non-athletic extracurricular category. So Gary has got a spreadsheet done that will easily allow us to calculate those wages. I've asked Don to have a joint meeting, extracurricular and financial planning, so we can take a look at the full scope of the financial impact of some of these wage adjustments. And we'll be bringing it to the board. I don't know, probably I don't know if we have an end of November meeting or if we have first meeting in December, how that works out. You concur, Don?
Thank you, Mr. Pia. Any questions for our extracurricular committee? Thank you. Before we move to our next item, which will be discuss and take possible action on job posting, I would read these chats because they relate to our most recent open discussion from CJ Neal. Thank you for bringing school reopening discussion back to the table. From Becky Rurica, thank you for encouraging the conversation for possibly opening school. From Brenda Kita, thank you for reopening discussion to get the kids back to school. The next item of our agenda is item number 7, to discuss and take possible action on job posting for an assistant technology director.
Yes, I have Mr. Moore here with me tonight, and he is going to bring forth a proposal to add a technology specialist to help support the needs of the ever-growing and expanding needs of all of our students as well as teachers and other employees. As the board knows, we have expanded our technology K-12, and that has put an additional challenge on his plate. And he will be talking with the board about potentially getting some support to help with that. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Moore, if you could provide the board with a little more detail.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Meer. Thank you, Board of Education, for allowing me to join you in this evening's meeting. As you know, I joined the district nearly 10 years ago. I think I'm on year 8 now, and I've had a long run and built a lot of memories. And so I'd like to provide a quick review of where things stood when I started over 7 years ago. The one laptop per student program was still in its early years. I think we were maybe in year 3 when I joined. And so our one-to-one model of one device per student was only being applied at the 9 through 12 spectrum of grades in the secondary school. Fast forward to today, and all of our students are learning remotely from home. They have been issued a device by the district, whether that be an iPad in grades K-1-2, a Chromebook in grades 3 through 8, or continuing with a laptop through grades 9 through 12. I have seen our installation of devices almost triple in size since I've joined, yet our staffing has been reduced by 50% over that same time period. Mrs. Van Meer offered me the wonderful opportunity of trying to do this a few years on my own, but yet extended the invitation at any point to reach out and ask for help if I felt that I wasn't as ready or able to run the show alone. I think when we spoke initially, that may have been the case, but with the way the landscape has changed and we've embraced technology in today's learning environment, I find myself spending most days simply tied to the phone, unable to concentrate on any IT projects that would help the district move forward. I find it terribly hard to secure time to work on district initiatives, such as rolling out ClassLink, the single sign-on solution that's been popular and wildly successful in the elementary school. So I proposed restoring an assistant type position to the IT department. I would refer to that position as a technology support specialist. I would envision that role would begin by taking the pressure off of me where I spend most time. And that is, as I mentioned, writing emails and taking phone calls and providing support to teachers, parents, and students. I think we've done well enough, but I think with some more staffing in the department, that would enable me to spend more time focused on developing the training resources and providing professional development opportunities. I like to say I think we're doing good, but I'm confident that we can do much, much better and really, really capitalize on the investment that Gibraltar has made in all of technology. I would be looking for a full-time position with related education and a couple years of related experience, someone with a background similar as mine, with an education and past experience in the IT field. And I would envision this position could grow with the candidate over time, assuming they would take on additional responsibilities in device management and systems administration and developing and delivering that professional development, which supports all of the technology that we have at the district. I have crafted a proposal that I shared in committee last week, and I have drafted a position description I feel is ready to be published. And again, I thank the board and Mrs. Van Meer for all of their support and allowing me the opportunity to present this request. Other questions?
I certainly understand the need, and I think it's a good idea to post a position. You've done a remarkable job, Andy, and I congratulate you on all you've done and taken
Thank you.
on much more than was originally planned for you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with Mr. Weborg and say enthusiastically, of course, I support this. Mr. Moore, you've been a rock star. It's, and I say that having been a colleague of yours and talking with other families in the community during this very difficult time. It's one thing to take on an inordinate amount of work and another thing to do it with such grace and class. And the constant feedback I get from the community is that Mr. Moore is incredible. So thank you so much for your work, and I'm sure we'll be happy to get you the help that you need, because you're carrying a great deal with our technology right now. So thank you.
I agree. And I just want to add that I look forward to all the things that you will be able to do for our school, having this help to do more of the legwork and to give you that opportunity to really continue to expand. I mean, you've definitely expanded the technology already in our district, but to continue to do that, especially in the age of all these apps and platforms and different things that we're using for remote learning and even in the classrooms on a regular basis. So I appreciate you being humble enough to step back and say, I need this help, because I think sometimes that's the hardest thing we do, is we want to continue to do it all. So I appreciate you doing that, taking your slice of humble pie and bringing it here for us to get you the help to continue to flourish in the job.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman.
Are there any other board comments before I read a chat? And then we will entertain a board motion regarding the posting of this position as the agenda item speaks to. We have from Mrs. Whitteborg, the last year has been amazing, an amazing demand on Mr. Moore, renovation needs, and now virtual learning from Carrie Bauman. Mr. Moore, you are amazing, and I hope you get some help. You have been there for my family. We note that Mr. Moore made the comment that it's in our agenda this evening listed as an assistant technology director. He's recommending that this position be posted as a tech support specialist.
Correct.
Is there a motion to this effect?
I will move to it for a job posting for, now you said an assistant technology director. Is that correct? Assistant technology director.
Mrs. Hickey, I had asked Mrs. Van Meer, and I believe she may have shared that we may amend the post or the approval to term it as a technology support specialist.
Thank you. I knew it was different. I moved to post for, say it again, Ann. I'm sorry, Ann.
A technology support specialist. Thank you.
Thank you. Technology support specialist.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Hickey, a second by Mr. Weborg to approve the posting for a technology support specialist. Is there any comment or statement about this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same? Motion passes. The next agenda item is item number 8, discuss and take possible action to postpone the student trip to Spain scheduled for the summer of 2021.
The pandemic is causing us to do a lot of things that we don't want to do. And one of those things happens to deal with our Spanish trip. I have Dr. Metner and Rosa Nelson here tonight to talk to you about the trip and the reason for their recommendation. Dr. Metner?
Thank you, Mrs. Van Meer. I guess I'll start with expressing how grateful I am for, on behalf of our students, that we have a community and board that supports a trip to a Spanish-speaking country. And also how excited I am to have someone like Senora Nelson at the head of that program. She's extremely organized, does a great job with the safety of the children when they're abroad. And it's kind of with a heavy heart that I bring this forward. But I would like to recommend that we postpone our trip to Spain until until June of 2022. There are some options that the tour company provided us, one of which being that. And I think that is the best option we have right now, considering the pandemic and the unknowns of
Could you
internet
put the
travel.
board
So-
meeting on that machine? My machine is just bogged down slow.
Yeah, would you like to jump on the Zoom meeting, or you want to watch?
I need board there. I've lost track. I cannot follow the conversation.
Steve, are you on both the YouTube and the Zoom call?
We'll continue until I get a replacement piece up. The last I heard was Dr. Metner describing the conditions.
Thank you, Dr.
Is there
Seifert.
any other comment or anything else we need to understand?
I would simply ask Senora if I have missed anything in my recommendation, and then she would be available for any questions.
If you want me to intervene,
Good
yeah,
evening,
the
Mrs. Nelson.
company, Dr. Seifert, okay, the company EF Tours, I contacted the company and they gave me 3 different options. And one of them would be to postpone it. Another one would be to totally cancel the trip. And then the parents will receive all the money back, but for $500. And then the other one would be to cancel the trip, and then they would receive a bonus or like not a bonus, but they will receive like a certificate to be applied to another possible future trip. And the way the way things are right now, and I don't know what may happen in June, but the situation in Spain, it's not very good right now. So I would, my recommendation would be to postpone, I don't know if I'm, postpone the trip an entire year to, instead of June of 21, June of 22nd. I think that would be just to play it safe and so, then obviously there are some issues, like I have a couple of senior students, and but they will have to make their own decisions about what they would like to, how they would like to, what they would like to do with that. It is very difficult because there is a lot of echo, so I don't know. I will be available if you have any other questions.
You started to touch on the seniors, so I would assume that our graduating seniors would not be able to go in 2022, so they would have to take a refund, or for them it would be a canceled trip. Is that correct?
Okay, I have one former student, they could still take the trip if they wanted. And I have one of the students already just was a senior last year, but so they could if they still wanted, but I don't know if they would prefer to save their money and do something like a study abroad in college, or I don't know. So that would be an option that they would have to make themselves if they want to. Right now we have 21 kids enrolled in this trip. We have 21 students. So if those 3 students, they decide, they don't want to go, then they will have, I suppose it will have to be their own decision,
But they could.
my recommendation would be to postpone it.
Okay,
a whole
but those 3 seniors could still go in 2022.
I mean, yeah, they will have that, yeah, they could go if they wanted to.
So that we might understand the recommendation. I'm hearing that the trip and the conditions for such trip this spring, this year, are unfavorable.
Well, I mean, the company, they still are organizing trips, but right now, the way things are in Spain, it's not a good situation. So I would say, I don't want to take any kids there, you know, when they're situated, you know, and it could be unsafe, or what about if somebody gets sick there or something? I don't know. I would rather wait an entire year to make sure that there is a vaccine, therapeutics, and things are, we know better how things are going to work out. I mean, that would be my recommendation. I would feel more comfortable waiting an entire year.
In the logistics of then Mrs. Nelson, would be that you are suggesting that we postpone till the 2022 school year, and that we take a certificate or take a refund of money.
Okay, I would just to postpone it, because then, if we postpone the trip, okay, I'm assuming that we wouldn't have to pay any extra costs, and so we would kind of lock, and I will have to double check, but we would lock the price, okay?
Okay.
Make a motion to postpone the student trip to Spain until 2022.
I'll second that.
We have thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Weborg, a second by Mr. Piat, to postpone the student trip to Spain until the summer of 2022. Prior to our, as we should have done before the motion, from Tiffany Porter, I completely understand the postpone, but Becca is going to be bummed. We look forward to 2022. I think there will be a lot of bumming with regard to the trip. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
The opposed, the same? Thank you. That motion passes.
Thank you, Senor.
Item number 9 on our agenda this evening is to discuss and take possible action to waive service learning hours for the graduating class of 2021.
Yes, thank you. I have Dr. Metner here tonight to discuss with the board the potential of waiving those service hours due to the COVID health crisis.
I will wait for a green light to begin.
Cipher went out. He's back.
Thank you. I'm sorry to miss what was just said. I've been in the process of changing devices.
Just doing an introduction to Dr. Metner. He will now discuss with the board the potential of waiving student service hours for this school year based on the pandemic health crisis. Dr. Metner?
Thank you.
Thank you. As we consider reopening the schoolhouse with the risk mitigation strategies that we have in-house, the changes we've made to the physical plant, as well as the various protocols we will follow with students in the building, if that were to move forward, it certainly gives me concern that our seniors may need, if they are finishing their service learning hours, need to venture out into the community in a situation where we do not have the ability to provide those risk mitigation strategies. Therefore, I humbly ask the board to consider removing for the class of 2021 the service learning requirement as part of a Gibraltar graduation requirement. We did this last year for the same reason. And I'm just concerned that we can't provide the same duty of care outside of the schoolhouse gates that we can within.
Darian, at our last meeting, we approved that contract for the jobs program. And those students are out in the community in an environment we don't control as well. You see the conflict there?
I agree that you're pointing out a difference in this potential, but those businesses are vetted through our youth apprenticeship program, and there's from what I understand, a safety component to that. And so, but whereas our service learning requirement hours we don't vet where students do their service learning. It can really take place in any number of locations that may or may not follow safety protocols. But I agree, you bring up a good point.
But many of the service clubs are not even functioning at this point. So, and churches don't have the open doors either. So I would make a motion to waive the service learning hours for the class of 2021.
I'll second that.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Weborg, a second by Mrs. Ward to waive the service learning hours for the graduating class of 2021. Any further conversation on this motion?
I was just going to say that the policy committee had actually discussed policies that may need to be waived for the 2021 school year. In those discussions, when we talked about our grading and our graduation requirements, this really was the only piece that we had left teetering, and we said, let's see how we go as we start the school year, and we may need to come back. So in the policy committee discussions, we had said that should things continue the way they had in spring, that we would have made that recommendation to waive this policy. So I just wanted to let the board know that the committee had discussed this previously. It just wasn't, we weren't at that point as we are right now. So.
Dr. Mettner, is students who are in the high school and engage in service work, are the numbers of hours that they accrue on a year cumulative across the 4 years?
That's correct. And I would like to, in a future meeting, give a sort of an account of what our current non-seniors have had opportunity to, when the years of which they've had an opportunity to accrue these hours. And I will present a prorated plan for future graduating classes if the board will allow it.
Thank you. I wanted just to introduce the topic that this is cumulative over time, and where we will give relief to the graduating class. It could be the class of 22 is losing some of that opportunity to accrue hours, and we would need to amend that policy. Any other comments on the motion before us?
The motion happened so fast. Did we look for public comment prior to making the motion?
I look all the time.
Great, thank you. Just making sure that we don't miss it.
No, thank you very much for keeping me on my screening, looking at multiple screens. We have a motion to waive the service learning hours for the graduating class of 2021. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The opposed, the same. Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Mettner. Item number 10 is to discuss and take possible action on high school boys basketball, high school girls basketball, and swimming winter sports seasons.
Yes.
Even though we do have this as an agenda item, the special meeting next Monday will address this. Does the board want to take action at this time on this agenda item, or would you appreciate tabling this until we hear a recommendation from the administration about a return to school and a return to our 4A's programs?
It seems like it would make sense to me to table the discussion until the special meeting at this point. Unless Dr. Matt or Mrs. Tank, are we under any deadlines with the WIA? I know that they're expecting confirmation of who's participating, but is there a deadline attached to that?
Not at this time. The only thing that we have to take in mind that girls basketball does start the second week in November. So I think we should have a good handle on it if we have a meeting next week.
Thank you,
So-
Mrs. Tank.
Thank you.
I
Mrs.
appreciate the
Ward?
tabling. The information I had prepared for this evening does not reflect a possible change to the threshold levels. So thank you.
Peggy,
Mrs. Ward,
when
does
does
your
the-
motion stand?
When does the competition start?
Our first competition is with girls, November 24th, which is a non-conference.
Okay.
Again, there's a lot of discussion that we'll be having with the principals and the other ADs and the commissioner regarding how we're going to move forward with proceeding this season.
Okay.
So
Thank,
we could do
thank you.
conference or so there's a lot to still to be determined. So thank you.
When is your next meeting for that, for the principals and the ADs to continue to have those
The
discussions?
principals are meeting tomorrow, and we're going to discuss a plan for conference play that would be presented to our ADs afterward. And non-conference games are also something that will be a topic of discussion actually tomorrow. So I will have updated Packerland information for our special meeting.
Then it definitely makes sense to have this discussion with our special meeting when we'll have the most up-to-date information.
Before I hear a second to Mrs. Ward's motion, we have a chat from April Keno. I believe it's hurting more than helping, keeping high schoolers at home. Only virtual learning and no activities is depressing. Please consider options to begin restoring their lives they left in March. Mrs. Ward, does your motion still stand?
Sure, I didn't make a formal one, but I can make one now.
Please do.
I would make a motion that we table possible action on high school boys basketball, high school girls basketball, and swimming winter sports seasons until the special meeting next week.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Ward, a second by Mrs. Sherman to table taking possible action on high school boys basketball, high school girls basketball, and swimming winter sports seasons. This motion to table requires a roll call vote, please alphabetically.
Oh my.
Hickey, aye.
Piat, aye.
Pfeiffer, aye.
Sherman, aye.
Ward, aye.
Weaver guy.
Thank you. This agenda item is tabled. Item number 11 is to approve resignation from employment. Mrs. Van Meer.
Yes, thank you. I recently received a letter from Mary Witteborg announcing her retirement at the end of this school year. I want to thank Mary for her 16 years of service to Gibraltar School District. But I also want to say thank you, Mary, to the 32 years that you have served all the kids. So thank you so much. And I'm looking for approval of her retirement.
I don't want to. What if we say no?
To approve the resignation from employment from Mary Witteborg, and with a big thank you.
I will second reluctantly.
We have a motion by Mrs. Hickey, a second by Mrs. Sherman to accept the letter of resignation from Mary Witteborg. Any comments from board members on this motion?
Only that we are very grateful for having her the years that we've had her. They will be enormous shoes to fill and a great hole in our school community.
We will have ample opportunity between now and that effective date to make her aware of her wonderful career. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 You oppose the same? Sadly to say, Mrs. Witteborg, your letter of resignation is accepted. Thank you. Item number 12 is to approve job posting for business and marketing teacher.
Thank
I
you.
move to approve the job posting for business and marketing teacher.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Hickey, a second by Mrs. Ward to approve the posting for a business and marketing teacher. Any questions or comments regarding this motion? Before we move on it, Mrs. Witteborg says, thank you all. Many thanks going out this evening. We have a motion to post. Any comments or questions about the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to post for a business and marketing teacher, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion passes. Item number 13 is to approve employment of a varsity assistant soccer coach.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Tank and Dr. Metner to talk about the hiring process and their recommendation for our new assistant soccer coach.
We held interviews on October 13th, consisting of myself, Mrs. Tank, and Coach Tyler. And we're very excited to recommend Andrew Piering to be our next boys high school assistant soccer coach. He's currently employed with us as an instructional aide and has passed our background check, obviously. Andrew has a tangible passion for soccer that became evident in the interview. In anticipation of our potential spring season, we would very much like it if you would accept this recommendation, and we feel he'll do a great job. Anything to add, Mrs. Tank?
I would make a motion to approve the employment of Andrew Pirong as our varsity assistant soccer coach.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Ward, a second by Doubles. Mrs. Sherman will get this to employ Andrew Piering as our varsity assistant soccer coach. Any comment or question upon the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion passes. Item number 14 is to approve employment of a bus driver.
Thank you. The administration is bringing forth a recommendation to hire Billy Apple as our bus driver. Billy has been filling in as a substitute for a while now, and Rob Rarica gives his 100% thumbs up. Billy's doing a great job for us. So he is recommending the hire of Billy Apple.
I make a motion to approve the employment of Bill Apple as our bus driver.
Enthusiastically second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Weborg, a second by Mrs. Ward to approve the employment of Bill Apple as a bus driver. Are there any questions or comments upon the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Mr. Apple is employed. Item number 15 on our agenda is to approve short-term borrowing for cash flow purposes.
Thank you. I have Arba Leclerc here to talk to the board. She is asking that the board authorize the school district for short-term borrowing for cash flow purposes until revenues are received in both January and July. Arba, would you like to add a little more to that information?
Sure. I prepared a cash flow for 2021, and based on that, I'm looking at requesting a line of credit of $3.4 million at 3.72%. We had increased expenses due to COVID and the building overruns, which took an effect on our cash flow, besides the expected planned deficit that we had for this past school year. So again, based on that, I would request that we approve the line of credit.
Leslie, please repeat the amount and the percentage again. I heard 3.4 million.
3.4 million at 3.2%.
3.27%.
72.
72. Thank you. And how long would this line of credit run?
It's from November through each November we go for a new one.
Annually November through October. Then. Very good. Thank you.
Arba, how much of that do you anticipate actually borrowing? Is it?
I'm thinking probably around 3. We've done this before. We've had it that high years ago. And then we brought it down to where we had several years with zero. As with our planned fund balance, you know, but if we do our fund, building the fund balance, or plan that, and then plus our additional 1.4 million step recurring referendum, I think with both of those, that should be doable. So.
Okay.
Arba, I know I read it somewhere and I can't see it right now, but because of the pandemic, we were scheduled to put money into the
Correct. Yes.
operating fund, but now we're going to be pulling money out instead. What was those numbers again? Do you have those?
What we would have expected to put in, we were looking at putting in about, I think it was 600,000.
Okay.
5 and 600,000. And
looks like we're 584. We're going to be pulling back out.
Right. And, you know, it's a combination of things. It's the COVID expenses, it's the building overruns, plus we had increased expenses for this year. So
ionization and all that stuff.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Reborg, when we get to the next agenda item on our budget, we'll
Oh,
review
yes,
where we
sorry.
were and anticipating our revenue over expenditures this year, and now it will be expenditures over revenue.
Right.
For the purposes of this request for a short-term cash flow borrow, is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the short-term borrow of $3.4 million at 3.72% interest.
I'll second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Reborg, a second by Mr. Piat to approve a short-term borrow of $3.4 million at a percentage rate of 3.72%. Any further questions or comments about this motion? Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Item number 16 is to adopt the 2020-2021 budget.
Thank you. I have spoken with Arva Leclerc before this meeting in preparation for the board's, for the budget review and approval. I have asked her to put together comparisons of last year's budget to this year's budget. If you see any major differences, there are notes attached to that, which she will go through and explain what those major either revenues or expenditures are. And then in addition, Arba put together a comparison of here's where we were at the annual meeting compared to here's where we are now, just so you can have the most current information for your consideration. So Ms. Leclerc, would you please go through the budget with the board and kind of outline the differences between last year and this year and what the major reasons are for those differences?
One of the statements, the first statement that I gave you, and just to be clear, the proposed budget that we're looking at is highlighted in the yellow. We're comparing last year's budget with this year's budget, and we have little over $1.4 million more of revenue. That's the second year of the step recurring referendum. As you go down, you'll see I've adjusted some of the revenue accounts due to admissions and other school activity income. You know, we aren't going to expect as much with everything being shut down. And moving down interest, that's kind of, we just don't have as much assets being invested at this point. Then we get to other revenues and local sources. We are not, the auditorium's rent that we don't take in right now, and other building rentals and student fees, that type of thing, those have all been reduced in this current year budget. Going down to interdistrict payments, open enrolled students always varies every year, and this is the variance more or less for the third Friday count. Plus we have Carl Perkins in there in Title III, net changes. State and aid categorical, that was at last year's budget, it was higher than it ended up being as far as that aid. So it was more in line with what we have this year. So that's the difference there. Moving down to state revenue and other revenue, we had an increase there, a small increase. That's personal property and exempt computer aid, sparsity aid, per pupil aid, and high cost transportation aid are all in that number. So just any variances in any of those. Then we have special project grants. As you can see, the reason it's increased so much is we did have quite a bit of an increase because of the CARES Act. And we had increase in our Title IV that we're making use of. So then moving down to Title I, our allocation was reduced. So that's where that difference comes in. The REAP grant did increase, and refund receipts increased E-rate Category 2 funding, which we don't always have every year. So that's in the revenues. Then we move down to undifferentiated curriculum and regular curriculum. Regular curriculum, we added reading specialists and a reading interventionist, and both of those areas we would have had costs for the aides that we hired for the COVID, and increased costs, just things like the raises that were approved and things like that, and plus just extra classroom expenses. And it's kind of that across the board with the the smaller amounts that there's differences. One of the other larger ones moving down to business administration was the ionization system. That we had some changes that netted down that would have been higher last year because of the building project. So there isn't as much of a change as you would think. But we had COVID expenses last year in that area as well. So, typically I would expect it to be higher in a typical year, but mainly because of the building expenses that were worked into the budget last year, it's not as different as I would expect. Then moving on down to other support services, where the technology department, there's almost $100,000 increase there. I think we all know that has a lot to do with the COVID expenses that we had to take on. The interfund transfers, that includes special ed. And so again, the aides that we hired would be in those budget numbers. And then finally, instructional service payments increased, and that's with the open enrolled students out, and third Friday count changes. So what I'm looking at now is the total increase over last year budgeted items was $1,113,811.53, and looking at a deficit of 584,322.21 for approval for this year.
Arba, could you explain to me how come we have more students open enrolled into our district than out of our district, but our open enrolled out cost is greater than our income for the students that are open enrolled into the district?
It's not a netted number. That's all students out, and then the students in are in the revenue. Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, because I know that open enrolled into the district, you have said that there were 22 in and there are 19 going out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm looking at at the budgets,
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing that the open enrolled student out is 201,431. But then the income category that has the interdistrict payments is under 200,000. And that includes two other categories. So I'm just curious why we would pay more for our students enrolled out when there's less of them than we would get for those coming in.
Oh, you're looking at the budget number. Okay, let's.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that number is not all open enrolled. That 209 is not all open. That's what I'm saying is it's.
No, you have a note that says include open enroll students out third Friday count of 201,431. So that's the note that I'm reading on the side.
Those two numbers are that much of the budgeted number.
Correct. So 201,431 is the number that is the dollar amount that we pay out for our students who open enroll out.
It includes, it's not just open enrolled students. What I was saying okay. Well, okay, because of the special ed. Special ed's at a higher rate.
Okay, so even though we have more students that are open enrolled in, if we have students that are open enrolled out that require special education, that's a higher reimbursement. And that is why we would see a higher expense than we would.
Right, it's not the same rate just because of it's not the exact same rate across the board by student. The open enrolled out, the special eds that are out are at a much higher rate.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That makes more sense as to why those are so different.
Other questions for Mrs. Leclerc? Mrs. Leclerc, then we are looking at a budget request of, if I'm reading the number right, $13,500,037.85.
Correct.
Do you want to make comment on changes in that number from the discussion at the annual meeting? And I think that would take us back to Mr. Weborg's comment earlier that at the annual meeting, we were anticipating revenues over expenditures, reality setting in. Our expenditures have greatly exceeded our anticipation. And now it is a flip, and we have, once again in this district, expenditures over revenue. But yet we know through our work that all of those expenditures have gone to the point of creating a low incidence environment and improving our engagement with children through the employment of staff.
I make a motion to approve the budget of $13,500,037.85.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Weborg, a second by Mrs. Hickey to approve a 2021 budget of $13,500,037.85. Are there any questions or comments upon the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? The motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Leclerc, for your explanations. We will move to item number 17, which is to set the 2020-21 tax levy.
And I will turn that back over to Mrs. Leclerc to present that levy for board consideration and final approval.
Okay, we're looking at a $12,382,838 tax levy. That would consist of $11,405,438 for the operation levy and $977,400 for debt service. The valuation in the county has gone up. I gave you a comparison on that as well. to see where all the municipalities had increases. So that helps us out a little bit with our mill rate. Current mill rate then is that I'm asking you to set is 3.293 or 3.29. And the comparison over last year is 24 cents more than it was last year. And that would give us $24 increase per $100,000 in value of property. So looking at setting it at the 12,382,838.
Which number do you want?
The 12 million.
12,382,000. Okay. I make a motion to approve the operation levy of $12,382,838.
To clarify, that's the total levy that we're approving, correct? You said operation?
Correct. It consists of, yes.
That
That
as well.
It's the total levy, and can we refer to it as the tax levy?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Weborg and a second by Mrs. Sherman to approve the 2021 tax levy of $12,382,838. Is there any discussion or question to this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, the same? The motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Leclerc, for your work on our budget and upon the presentation of the tax levy information. Appreciate your work always. Item number 18 of our agenda, this evening is to hear a first reading of proposed amendments to the following board policies.
I will just briefly give an overview for you, and if anyone has any questions, certainly ask, or feel free to email me before our next meeting. But the 3 student supervision and welfare are Neola updates. But I would like to say that we looked at these policies under the eyes of being in COVID and being in remote learning. So we have taken all of these kinds of things into account as we present these. Policy 0167.5, use of electronic communications. This specifically references the board. And we wanted to make this very clear as to what the expectations are for board members. The same with 0167.6 as far as correspondence and how that is for board members for public records. And then policy 0100, which is definitions. For this one, these are Neola updates, but we also wanted to change personal communications to technology, or personal communication devices to technology devices, to fit with, to be current in that sphere, as well as making it align to all the policy changes we've been putting through. And that's all for today, but I promise we'll have more.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. And I express appreciation to the committee for looking at the Neola recommendations and reading them in the eyes of what is in particular important for a Gibraltar school district. We don't always take all of the language of Neola. We rephrase it and direct it to the Gibraltar School District. This is a first reading of these proposed amendments. As usual, board members, as you have questions or comments about these, please direct them to Mrs. Sherman prior to a next meeting when these will be presented for a second reading. Is there any question about this agenda item before we move on? Hearing none, we'll move on to the 19th item of our agenda to approve the payment of bills.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Hickey, a second by Mr. Weborg to approve the payment of bills as presented. Any questions or comments?
I just have one question for Arba or Steve. Normally we have a audit report from our auditors about this time? Are we scheduled to do one?
The audit,
Or,
typically the audit isn't finished until December.
oh, you're right. So we
Yeah,
have it in January. Okay.
right.
I see we've been charged, so,
They do it in increments.
right. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Weborg. Good eyes. Any other questions or comments about bills? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of paying the bills, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We will pay the bills as presented. Item number 20 is to accept donations.
We have two donations tonight. The first is from JP Express, our Pride Pump for September, $368.08, and that will be going to the Angel Fund. And then we have $1,250 from the HS Baird number 174 Lodge, Sturgeon Bay, and the Wisconsin Foundation, Dosman, Wisconsin, to be used to help with costs associated with COVID-19 abatement.
Very kind.
I move to approve donations with thanks.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Sherman, a second by Mr. Piat to approve the donations with thanks. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
The opposed, the same. We've accepted donations, and it is very kind of our community. Mr. Piat.
You ready?
I am.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
See you next Monday.
See you Monday.